What's happening, guys? This is James Blum with MMOHuts.com with a quick weekly recap for MMO news and announcements for the week ending March 3rd, 2014. Once again, our first bit of news this week has to do with Elsword for two reasons. The music in the trailer is always perfect to start out the news video, and Killer Combo launched the final chapter in the Dungeons of Sander Saga, with 2 new dungeons and 2 new fields between areas, raising the level cap to 70. Now, I know we've heard this before, but players will face some of the most challenging enemies ever before in this update. With the Wind Priestess in her claws, the evil succubus Queen Karis awakens the Behemoth, aimed at destroying Elrios. And once players have caught up to the unmerciful Behemoth and rescued the Priestess, they'll enter the heart of the Behemoth to face Queen Karis in her true demonic form. From the video and the setting, it sounds like an exciting update. One thing is for sure, there's never a content dry spell when it comes to Elsword. On a slightly similar note, Nexon Europe is now in full motion with the closed beta of Lost Saga. Starting now, European closed beta testers can download the client, which is available to them in English, German, French, Italian, and Polish. The servers are now open, only a few issues, and this beta period will last until March 5th. For those of you who are currently in the closed beta, they do plan to have an account wipe, and for those of you who are not in the closed beta just yet, now's just as good a time as any to sign up to be in the next closed beta, but by the speed of things, they may just jump straight into open beta fairly quick, so you may not have to wait that long. And speaking of closed beta, this past week, Psyonix and Square Enix announced the closed beta of Nosgoth. Previously, special invite-only players could access the game under the early access portion of Steam, but as of this past Thursday, the 27th, keys that were sent out just prior were now being activated for the game's closed beta. The developers have stated that the game will be continually updated throughout the beta, with future additions including new maps, game modes, and character classes, plus a few new weapons, abilities, skills, and more. I've said it before, and I'll say it again, this game looks absolutely awesome. The closed beta gets us that much closer to it. Next up, War Thunder's Ground Forces started its third wave of closed beta for those who purchased tank packs after January 10th. This wave seems to mark the final wave before the game's open beta, though in this wave, players can test all models of tanks that will be accessible in the open beta. In addition to that information, Gaijin Entertainment announced the biggest game update yet will be going live this spring. Update 1.39 is set to include features such as user-generated content, letting players create their own planes, locations, and missions, as well as their own unique camouflage patterns, of course. This update will bring in 18 new planes to the game, introduce squadrons and squadron versus squadron battles, an improved crew and control settings interface, a slightly changed flight model, and of course the introduction to player-controlled ground units with the merge of ground forces. And once again, the only date we have for this is sometime this spring, but lots of stuff going on in this update for sure. And on a similar note, of course, Wargaming released a trailer last week regarding future improvements to World of Tanks. Primarily the look and feel of the game. The producer of World of Tanks aims to touch upon the very core of the game and deliver a whole new level of realism and immersion. The trailer you see playing here discusses briefly how the developers plan to implement a greater level of detail to vehicle models, providing for a more realistic gaming environment. The technical advancements in the game will also extend to its physics engine, introducing a highly responsive environment, dynamic suspension, blow-off turrets, and damageable small parts. It's updates like these that just go to show that there may never be a time when you can say World of Tanks is actually complete. There's always changes to be made to games. Next up, we got a decent amount of MOBA news this week. First up, Dota 2 has sold out of its first wave of tickets for ESL within minutes of their release this past Friday. That may sound shocking, but what's crazier than that is ESL is taking place in one of Germany's World Cup football stadiums, just to give you an idea how big that is. Over the course of 2 days, 8 of the world's best Dota 2 teams will fight to take home an impressive $150,000 prize pool. This will definitely go down in gaming history. Not only does an esport fill an entire football stadium, it does so rather quickly. League of Legends released an interesting new champion this past week, Vel'Koz, a beast from the Void who kills to learn and learns to kill. The Eye of the Void lets nothing come between him and his ultimate prize, knowledge. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but he looks awesome, especially with his Battlecast skin, almost like World of Worlds, and his abilities look really fun to use. We've got 2 new videos going into details at the news section at MMOHuts.com. And to finish off the MOBA news this week, Infinite Crisis has found its day to enter open beta. Warner Bros. Interactive Entertainment and Turbine announced last week that Friday, March 11th will mark the open beta date for the game, and to celebrate, they've released 3 new champions at once: the Green Arrow, Aquaman, and the highly anticipated Mecha Superman. Now that we've got a time frame on open beta, hopefully the in-game matchmaking will follow. Check the link in the description below for more details, as well as the individual champion spotlights. And speaking of releasing champions, 2 battlebot reveals came up last week for Transformers Universe that not only showed off the playstyle of both Meltdown and Duststorm, but also gave us a little more insight into what the game is about. My new verdict is that it looks like an action RPG battle arena game instead of a straight-up MOBA. Either way, the trailers are cool and the game looks interesting, and it seems like we're getting closer to beta phases, especially since there are frequent updates to their fairly new website. Next up, we've got some teasers from Neverwinter. Last week, a new state of the game was released, revealing some major improvements coming to the in-game PvP. The 3 primary issues being addressed are matchmaking systems, the overwhelming power of burst damage, and overbearing crowd control. As a counter, a new stat is being introduced to PvP gear to help alleviate some of the frustration, while improved matchmaking should help set players up with more evenly matched opponents. For more details on this update, be sure to check out the latest State of the Game video from the link in the description below. A pretty large content update made its way to Dragon's Prophet Europe recently, completing the first phase of its evolution system, making the game even more like Pokemon. With Dragon Evolution, dragons can further be upgraded with additional skills that can make all the difference in the fight with other players in the Dragon Arena. See? Just like Pokemon. There are plenty of new features added in this update, including the revised mounted combat in PvE, and a whole new set of skills that not only open up new options in PvP, but also lets players attack monsters directly from the back of their mount. Seems like a pretty nice sized update. And finally, for our last bit of news, the highly anticipated Sacrifice of the Vow mini-expansion is drawing ever closer to Path of Exile. Last week, DizzyBW met up with Grinding Gear Games to talk about some of the new features, as well as the progress of the Scion and Tasked Leagues. The new mini-expansion brings a whole new corrupted element to the game, with new ultimate skills that charge on kills and seemingly brutally punish enemies. There are 2 new leagues coming to the game, Invasion and Ambush. In Ambush League, players will come across crates that contain monsters and items that are determined by the stats on the chest, which can obviously be re-rolled. Now, the Invasion League is, well, all you need to know is it's designed to kill players who love hardcore leagues. Check out DizzyBW's developer interview with Grinding Gear Games by clicking here, and join me this Friday starting around 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time during our live stream. We'll be checking out the new Sacrifice of the Vow content, which will be available Wednesday the 5th, and should be awesome. Anyway guys, that's about it for MMO news and announcements for this past week. If you're looking for more information about the news and the recap, follow the links in the description below or head over to MMOHuts.com/news. Feel free to discuss the news in the comments below or head over to MMOHuts.com/forums. But until next time guys, that's going to be it for me. I'm James Blonde. See you out there, gamers.